They're already on the platform. Lyrazel's warning ripped through the air, sharp as the shriek of incoming plasma fire that sizzled against the permacrete inches from Jack's rider's boot. He didn't waste breath on a reply, just hit the Star Wanderer's ramp control. It sighed open, a gateway to precious seconds, just as Guardian Commandos, black carapaces stark against Cygnus VII's bruised twilight, began rappelling down the opposite gantry. The ramp slammed shut behind them, swallowing them whole, a metallic gulp that came not a moment too soon. A volley of plasma bolts seared the spot where they'd stood, the air crackling with discharged energy. Inside, the two of them, enemies mere minutes ago, now something far more complicated and far less defined, were flung against the bulkhead as Jax threw the ship into a gut-wrenching ascent. They were hurtling into the void. The Star Wanderer, bless her patched-up hull, responded to Jax's desperate commands like an extension of his own will. He weaved the freighter through the glittering, treacherous canyons of Cygnus VII's upper megalopolis, Guardian pursuit fighters screaming at their heels. Their emerald lasers stitched lethal patterns across the viewport. Closer. Too close. Are you actually trying to get us killed, or is this some kind of artistic statement? Lyrazel's voice, though strained, still held that icy edge he was beginning to find intriguing. She was braced in the co-pilot's seat, her cobalt skin almost luminous in the frantic dance of console lights, knuckles white where she gripped the armrests. Jax just grinned, a flash of teeth in the dim cockpit. Relax, princess. I call this aggressive negotiations with gravity. Besides, he grunted, yanking the yoke hard to port, sending them into a stomach-churning barrel roll around a colossal advertising holosign. Standard exits are for amateurs. The maneuver bought them a few precious seconds. Enough. He slammed the hyperspace activator, and the pursuing Guardian fighters, caught flat-footed by his audacity, became angry green fireflies dwindling in their wake. The star-strewn canvas outside warped, stretched, then snapped into the dizzying, ethereal tunnel of hyperspace. Silence, thick and heavy, descended upon the cockpit, broken only by the low thrum of the engines and their ragged breathing. A very charged atmosphere, indeed. Once his own heart rate decided to return from its frantic sprint, Jax engaged the autopilot and swiveled his seat to face her. Lyrazel was already watching him, her gaze intense, unreadable. Those nebula-colored eyes, they seemed to see right through his usual defenses. All right, he began, trying for casual, not entirely succeeding. You got us into this mess by pointing a blaster at my charming face. The least you can do is tell me who in the blazes you are, and why this celestial keystone you're so fond of is worth turning Cygnus 7 upside down. She looked away, her profile sharp against the swirling blues of hyperspace. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. My name is Lyrazel. And the keystone, she paused, choosing her words with a precision that spoke of long habit. It's more than just advanced technology, Ryder. It's an echo. Something ancient. Its power could realign the very fabric of this sector, or shatter it. Her voice dropped. And there are many who would see it shattered for their own gain. Like who? Jax pressed. You mentioned the Guardians. Who else is on this delightful treasure hunt? The Syndicate, she said, her tone flat. The Hegemon Council. Smaller predators, too numerous to name. They all want its power. Jax whistled softly. The Syndicate and the Hegemon Council. Big players. Very big. This wasn't just another run-of-the-mill smuggling gig gone sideways. This was galactic-level trouble. His usual philosophy, grab the package, ask no questions, collect the credits, felt suddenly, woefully inadequate. This job felt different. Personal, almost, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way Lyra Zell said, ancient echo, a flicker of something almost reverent in her eyes before the ice returned. Or maybe it was just the lingering scent of cinnamon and stardust that he could still faintly recall from their brief, violent dance on that rooftop. He found himself studying her, the way the hyperspace light played across the delicate planes of her face, the subtle tension in her jaw. An unexpected pull, a current of something he hadn't felt in a long, long time, tugged at him. Dangerous. This was all incredibly dangerous. So, he said, his voice a low rumble, you're telling me you dragged me into a galactic free-for-all with a doomsday device that's also some kind of holy relic, and you didn't even pack snacks. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Gone as quickly as it appeared. My apologies for the lack of refreshments. My priority was securing the keystone. Right. Securing it from me. Her gaze met his again, direct, unwavering. You were a variable I hadn't fully accounted for. I get that a lot, Jax admitted. He leaned forward slightly. So, who do you work for, Lyra Zell? Who sent you? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, he saw a flicker of vulnerability, a crack in the Zorian warrior's armor. No one sends me. Not anymore. I had my reasons for wanting the keystone kept from certain hands. She looked down at her own hands, then back at him. The truth is, Ryder, I don't know who to trust. But right now, her eyes held his. Right now, you and this ship are the only chance I have of keeping it safe. Of keeping me safe. The admission hung in the air, a fragile thing. Reluctant allies. That was them, all right. Stuck together in the belly of the Star Wanderer, with half the galaxy probably gearing up to hunt them down. He should be terrified. He should be plotting how to ditch her and the keystone at the first available, and suitably disreputable, spaceport. But as he looked at Lyra Zell, at the mixture of fierce resolve and weary uncertainty in her extraordinary eyes, all he felt was a grim determination. And that undeniable, damnably inconvenient pull. Well, Princess, he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. Looks like we need to disappear. Properly this time. Any 5-star hideouts on your list that aren't currently crawling with guardians? Lyra Zell considered him for a long moment, that calculating glint back in her eyes. There is a place. Xylos. A resort world in the Cerulean Nebula. Obscenely luxurious. Impeccable privacy protocols. The last place anyone would look for us. Jax raised an eyebrow. Xylos? A pleasure planet? You think a 5-star resort is the place to lay low with the galaxy's most wanted artifact and its equally wanted guardian? He had to admit, the audacity appealed to his own way of thinking. A ghost of her earlier smile returned, this time with a hint of mischief. Sometimes the brightest light casts the darkest shadow, smuggler. And besides, she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur that sent an unexpected shiver down his spine, I know people there. Jax leaned back, the decision made. Xylos it was. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, probably. And somehow, the thought was more exhilarating than terrifying. He set the new coordinates, the Star Wanderer obediently altering its course through the chaotic beauty of hyperspace. Towards Xylos. Towards an unknown future. Towards whatever came next for 2 reluctant allies and an ancient, powerful secret. Jax had leaned back in the pilot's seat of the Star Wanderer, a reckless grin playing on his lips as the ship punched in the coordinates for the Cerulean Nebula. Xylos. A pleasure planet. What could possibly go wrong? He was about to find out. The Star Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace with a familiar lurch, and even Jack's rider, a man who'd seen his share of galactic wonders, usually from the less reputable side of spaceports, felt his breath catch. Xylos glittered. That was the only word for it. It hung in the void like a fallen constellation, a breathtaking sphere of swirling azure and emerald, its atmosphere shimmering with an internal luminescence. A paradise world, meticulously sculpted and fiercely protected, where the galaxy's elite came to forget their troubles, their empires, their conscience. For Jax and Lyrazel, however, it was a 5-star prison in waiting, a gilded cage whose bars were spun from opulence and illusion. And they were about to check in. Impressive, isn't it? Lyrazel murmured, her voice unusually soft as she gazed at the approaching jewel. They say the architects used actual stardust in the atmospheric generators. Probably charges extra for it, Jax grunted, already maneuvering the Star Wanderer towards the designated private landing platforms, following the discreet NAV beacon Lyrazel had provided. Her claim of knowing people here was apparently not an idle boast. The landing clearance was smooth, almost unnervingly so. No invasive scans, no officious port authorities. Just a polite, automated voice welcoming them to Xylos and guiding them to a secluded berth nestled amidst lush, bioluminescent flora. As they disembarked, the air, warm and fragrant with exotic blossoms, wrapped around them like a silken shroud. "All right, Mr. Kalen Thorne," Lyrazel said, her professional mask firmly back in place, though a new, almost imperceptible spark danced in her nebula eyes. She smoothly looped her arm through his. The contact, so sudden, so domestic, sent a jolt through Jax. Her body was lean and strong against his, a warmth that belied her cool exterior. "We are here celebrating our 5th bonding anniversary. Try to look less like you're about to hijack the nearest shuttle and more like you're madly in love." "Madly in love, got it," Jack said, forcing a hopefully besotted grin. He was surprised by her preparedness, the easy way she slipped into the role. "And you, Mrs. Thorne, try to look less like you're about to snap my neck if I put a foot wrong." Her fingers tightened briefly on his arm. "No promises, darling." The resort complex was a masterpiece of impossible architecture, cascading waterfalls that seemed to flow from the sky itself, anti-gravity gardens blooming with flowers that pulsed with gentle light, and walkways of shimmering crystal that wound through it all. Their suite, when an elegantly robed, multi-limbed attendant ushered them in, was beyond opulent. It was a palace. Panoramic views of Xylos's twin moons, one silver, one violet, rising over a valley of iridescent dream trees. And in the center of the sprawling sleeping area, a single, colossal bed draped in fabrics that looked like woven moonlight. Jax dropped his battered duffel bag with a thud. "Right. I'll take the, remarkably comfortable-looking floor. Or maybe the balcony." It looked big enough to host a small skirmish. Lyrazel arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing on her lips. "How chivalrous, Mr. Thorne. But the Xylosian privacy protocols are legendary for their thoroughness. That includes monitoring for inconsistencies in guest behavior. We need to maintain our cover. Consistently." Her gaze flicked towards the bed, then back to him, a challenge in her eyes. The gilded cage indeed. Every luxurious detail a reminder of their precarious charade. Later, as twilight painted the Xylosian sky in hues of molten gold and deep indigo, they found themselves on their private balcony, a bottle of ridiculously expensive Xylosian ember wine breathing between them. The initial awkwardness had settled into a tentative truce, the earlier tension shifting into something more complex, still charged, but with undercurrents of curiosity rather than pure hostility. "Your species fascinates me, Ryder," Lyra Zell admitted after her second glass, the ember wine warming her usually cool voice. She leaned against the balcony railing, the twin moons casting ethereal highlights on her platinum hair and cobalt skin. Humans. So contradictory. Capable of such breathtaking violence, yet moments of unexpected tenderness. Her gaze flickered to him, then away. Jack studied her in the soft moonlight. She seemed to glow with an inner luminescence, an alien beauty that was both captivating and unsettling. "And your people, the Zorians? You're not contradictory." A faint smile. "Zorians value control. Discipline. Emotion is an inconvenience to be mastered." "Is that why you left your homeworld?" he pressed gently, remembering her fighting style, a dazzling, brutal fusion he'd never encountered before. "The way you fight, it's not pure Kareth, is it? You've adapted, incorporated other styles. That suggests time away. A different path." Her eyes, those swirling nebulas, snapped to his, surprised. "You are more observant than most humans, Jax Ryder." "And you," he countered, a smile tugging at his own lips, "are far more expressive than you claim Zorians are supposed to be." Their eyes locked, and the air between them crackled. That undeniable current, the one he'd felt in the Star Wanderer's cockpit, surged stronger now, fueled by the wine, the moonlight, and the strange intimacy of their shared danger. She moved closer, almost imperceptibly, her hand coming to rest lightly on his chest, just over his heart. He could feel its warmth even through his shirt. "Perhaps," she murmured, her voice a husky whisper that made his own heart hammer against his ribs, "perhaps I have spent too much time among your kind." "Is that a complaint, Lyra Zell?" His voice had grown rough. Her fingers traced the worn fabric of his shirt, then the faint scar along his collarbone he'd gotten from a Krellian disruptor blast years ago. "Your species has certain qualities that mine often lacks." "Such as?" he prompted, his gaze dropping to her lips. "Spontaneity." Her eyes flickered up to meet his. "Passion." Her fingers trailed lower, towards the rapid beat of his heart. "A reckless disregard for consequences." And then their lips met. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a flashpoint, like touching a live power conduit to a starship's fuel core. The universe seemed to narrow to this single, searing point of contact. Her taste was exotic, intoxicating, wild honey and stardust, with an unexpected hint of spice, a flavor that went straight to his head, more potent than any ember wine. Her skin beneath his exploring fingers was impossibly smooth, warm to the touch despite its cool, blue hue. He pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her short, silky hair, the celestial keystone, the guardians, the entire damn galaxy forgotten. They broke apart, both breathing heavily, the silence of the balcony ringing in their ears. Lyra Zell's eyes had darkened to a deeper, more turbulent shade of blue, her pupils dilated. "This," she whispered, her voice unsteady, "this complicates things." Jax brushed a stray strand of platinum hair from her temple, his thumb lingering on her skin. "I've never been a fan of simple, princess." A small, almost rueful smile touched her lips. Before either of them could say more, before the fragile, dangerous new reality of that kiss could fully settle, a chime echoed from their suite's internal calm, a resort-wide announcement, a melodic, multi-tone voice inviting all esteemed guests to the evening's grand entertainment, a starlight gala in the Crystal Pavilion. "Showtime," Jax murmured, a familiar sense of foreboding settling in. Paradise always had a price. Lyra Zell nodded, her composure returning, though the flush on her high cheekbones and the lingering brightness in her eyes told a different story. We should make an appearance. Blend in. Blending in. Right. As they prepared to attend the gala, trying to slip back into the roles of Kaylin and Lyra Thorne, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that their gilded cage was about to get a lot smaller. The crystal pavilion was a marvel, a vast dome of transparent crystal that offered a 360-degree view of Xylos's star-dusted heavens. Aliens of a dozen species, draped in glittering finery, mingled, their laughter and chatter echoing under the celestial display. Jax, with Lyra Zell a stunning, if somewhat tense, vision on his arm, did his best to look like he belonged amongst the galactic glitterati. He nursed a drink, scanned the crowd, his old smuggler's instincts on high alert. And then he saw him. Across the crowded pavilion, standing near a fountain that cascaded with what looked like liquid light, was a tall, imposing figure in the severe, dark uniform of the Guardian Corps. His features were sharp, predatory, his eyes a chilling, pale amber. Recognition hit Jax like a physical blow, cold and sharp. Commander Vark. One of the Guardian's most ruthless and effective strategists. Supposedly on vacation. Their eyes met across the glittering throng. Vark's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth, only the cold promise of a predator that had just scented its prey. The commander gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod, not to Jax, but directly to Lyra Zell. A cold dread snaked down Jax's spine. This wasn't a coincidence. Their gilded cage had just sprung its trap. Lyra Zell stiffened beside him, her fingers digging into his arm. Vark, she breathed, her voice barely audible above the festive noise. He knows. Before Jax could respond, a new announcement, even more lilting than the last, floated through the pavilion. And now, esteemed guests, for a truly special experience, our anniversary couples are invited to the Serenity Gardens for the Celestial Bonding Retreat. A unique opportunity to deepen your connection under the Xylosian moons. Jax stared at Lyra Zell, a truly horrified expression dawning on his face. You've got to be kidding me. Commander Vark was already moving, not towards them, but towards the indicated exit for the Serenity Gardens, his gaze still locked on them with that unnerving, knowing smile. We have to go, Lyra Zell whispered urgently, her eyes wide with a dawning alarm that mirrored his own. We can't look like we're running. Not yet. He's watching every move. Lyra Zell's fingers dug into Jax's arm, her whisper a breath of ice against the warm Xylosian air. We have to go. We can't look like we're running. Not yet. He's watching every move. Jax glanced at Commander Vark of the Guardians, already making his stately way towards the indicated exit for the Serenity Gardens, that chillingly affable smile fixed on his face, a smile that didn't reach his pale amber eyes. A celestial bonding retreat. Seriously. The universe had a twisted, truly sick sense of humor. This entire opulent farce on Xylos was rapidly devolving from a gilded cage into a meticulously set trap. The celestial bonding retreat. It sounded like something dreamed up by a particularly sentimental droid. For Jax Ryder and Lyra Zell, two fugitives with a galaxy-altering artifact hidden in Jax's belt, it was a stage. A brightly lit, excruciatingly public stage, and Commander Vark was the lead critic in the audience, his eyes dissecting their every feigned smile, every forced touch. One wrong step, one flicker of their true desperation, and the curtain would undoubtedly fall, likely accompanied by stun blasts and the clang of magnacuffs. All right, Mrs. Thorne, Jax muttered through a clenched jaw smile as they joined the procession of other, genuinely blissful couples heading towards the gardens. Let's go, Bond. He could almost feel Vark's gaze burning into his back. The Serenity Gardens were, predictably, stunning. Bioluminescent flora cast a soft, ethereal glow on pathways that meandered through groves of weeping star-mist trees. A willowy, multi-limbed Xylosian with skin like polished jade, the facilitator, greeted them with an air of serene, almost narcotic calm. Couples were arranged in a loose circle. And then Vark, damn his impeccably tailored Guardian Corps uniform, materialized beside them with his own partner, a stern-faced woman who looked as thrilled to be there as Jax felt. "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, isn't it?" Vark's voice was smooth, like oil poured over broken glass. "Fancy meeting you here. I wasn't aware your anniversary coincided with my own brief respite from galactic affairs." "Commander Vark," Lyra Zell responded, her voice a perfect blend of polite surprise and wifely deference. Jax had to give it to her, the woman was an actress. What a delightful coincidence. "Xylos is so popular for these little getaways, isn't it, darling?" She squeezed Jax's arm hard. "Absolutely, my starlight," Jax managed, trying to channel every sappy Hullivid hero he'd ever mocked. "Couldn't imagine being anywhere else with my Kaelin." He almost choked on his own cover name. Vark's eyes lingered on Jax, that predatory amusement more pronounced now. "Your husband, Mrs. Thorne, he seems familiar. Though I confess, faces sometimes blur in my line of work. So many variables." "Oh, Kaelin has one of those faces," Lyra Zell purred. "Easily forgotten, I always tell him." "Quite the contrary," Vark murmured, his gaze unwavering. "I find I have an excellent memory for things of value." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, as fragrant and deadly as some of the garden's more exotic, carnivorous-looking blooms. This wasn't a casual encounter. Vark was playing with them. The facilitator, oblivious, or perhaps just extremely well paid to ignore such undercurrents, clapped their many hands together. "And now, cherished partners, we begin our journey into the heart of connection. Each couple will receive a harmony crystal. As you share your deepest truths, the crystal will resonate with the purity of your bond." Great. Deepest truths. With a Guardian Commander practically breathing down their necks. Small, glowing blue stones, the harmony crystals, were distributed. When Jax's fingers closed around theirs, sharing it with Lyra Zell, he felt a faint, almost imperceptible vibration, as if the crystal itself was assessing him, probing. "This is beyond ridiculous," he whispered to Lyra Zell as they sat cross-legged, facing each other, the ridiculously named crystal held between their joined hands. Other couples were already murmuring saccharine nothings to each other. "Focus, Jax," she hissed back, her eyes darting towards Vark, who was now 3 couples to their right, his own crystal looking decidedly lackluster in his grip. "He's not just watching, he's analyzing." The exercise, as explained by the blissed-out facilitator, required each partner to share something profoundly true while the other listened without judgment. "Wonderful." Jax leaned forward, until his forehead nearly touched Lyra Zell's. The scent of her hair, that strange, intoxicating mix of starlight and something wild, filled his senses. He had to say something. Something true. But what truth could he offer here, in this cosmic charade? He looked into her eyes, past the Zorian warrior, past the ice, and saw a flicker of the same fear, the same desperation that churned in his own gut. And something else. Trust. Maybe. "I've never," he began, his voice so low it was almost a thought, "I've never trusted anyone the way I trusted you last night, Lyra Zell. When things got complicated." He was thinking of the kiss, of the raw, unexpected honesty of it. And it terrifies the hell out of me. The harmony crystal between their hands pulsed. Brighter. A deep, vibrant sapphire glow. Lyra Zell's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, her fingers tightening around his. He felt the tremor run through her. She took a breath. "Among my people, the Zorians," she responded, her voice a low counterpoint to his, equally sincere, "what we shared, an unguarded moment between disparates, under duress, it would be said to forge a cotil. A bond that transcends the physical. It is, rarely spoken of. And considered, permanent." The crystal flared. Brilliantly. So intensely it cast dancing blue shadows across their faces, across the serene faces of the couples around them. Their light utterly eclipsed every other crystal in the circle. Even Vark's, which remained stubbornly dim, much to the apparent discomfort of his companion. "Remarkable," the facilitator trilled, drifting past them, their multiple eyes wide with wonder. "Such harmony. Such resonance. Rarely have I witnessed such a profound connection between, well, any species, let alone such a visually distinct pairing." Jax risked a glance at Vark. The commander's amber eyes were narrowed, fixed on them, on their incandescent crystal, a muscle twitching in his jaw. The affable mask was gone, replaced by a look of intense, calculating appraisal. Oh, they were so busted. As the facilitator finally declared the trust exercise complete, much to Jax's profound relief, Lyra Zell leaned close, her lips brushing his ear, sending an involuntary shiver down his spine despite the imminent danger. "We need to leave Xylos. Now. He knows. Or he suspects enough to make no difference." "How can you be sure?" Jax murmured back, though his own gut was screaming the same warning. "The way he's subtly signaling his private security detail," she breathed, her gaze flicking around the garden. "They're not Xylos resort staff. They're Guardian Corps, out of uniform. And they're positioning themselves near the exits." Jax scanned the periphery casually, his gaze sweeping over the smiling attendants. She was right. There were a few too many well-built individuals with watchful eyes and suspicious bulges under their loose Xylosian robes. They were being herded. "All right," he murmured, his mind racing. "Follow my lead. And try to look overwhelmed with passion." "That shouldn't be too difficult," she whispered back, a surprising hint of dry wit in her tone, before her expression smoothed into one of adoring, and slightly dazed, love. Jax rose to his feet, pulling Lyra Zell up with him. Then, with a theatrical sigh of utter devotion that he hoped looked convincing, he drew her into his arms. And kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss on the balcony. That had been unexpected, raw, a discovery. This was a performance, a desperate, calculated act of misdirection. But as his lips met hers, as he felt the soft surprise of her response, something of that earlier fire reignited. He deepened the kiss, spinning them slowly, deliberately, towards the arched entrance of a secluded terrace that overlooked the starlit ocean. To any onlookers, they were merely a couple so overcome by the romantic atmosphere of the celestial bonding retreat that they couldn't wait for the privacy of their suite. "Public displays of affection," he whispered against her lips, his voice muffled, "make people uncomfortable. Even trained security." He could feel the heat rising in his own cheeks. This was, by far, the most embarrassing escape plan he'd ever concocted. They slipped through the terrace doors, maintaining their embrace, their passionate charade, until they were sure they were out of direct sight of the main garden. Then, hand in hand, no longer feigning, they broke into a dead run, racing along the moon-slick garden paths back towards their opulent, gilded cage of a suite. "We have minutes, Jax." "At most." Lyra Zell panted as they burst into their suite, the door hissing shut behind them. She began hastily gathering her few essentials, her movements economical and precise. Jax, meanwhile, went straight to his duffel, his fingers finding the hidden compartment where the celestial keystone pulsed with its faint, internal light. He pawned the small, heavy case. "Got it. Never leave home, or a 5-star death trap, without the merchandise." He turned, ready to discuss their next insane move, but Lyra Zell had frozen, her head tilted, listening. The sound was faint at first, then clearer, the rhythmic tread of heavy boots in the corridor outside their suite. Too many boots. "Guardians," she breathed, her eyes meeting his, wide and dark with alarm. Jax nodded grimly. "Showtime's over." He grabbed her arm. "Service entrance. Now." Just as they reached the discreet panel that led to the service corridors, the main door to their suite exploded inwards with a concussive blast, showering the luxurious antechamber with splinters and debris. Through the smoking opening, Jax caught a glimpse of dark Guardian uniforms and leveled plasma rifles. Their time on Xylos, it seemed, had just run out. Spectacularly. The main door of their Xylosian suite imploded, showering the opulent room with debris and the acrid stench of fried circuits. Dark shapes of Guardian commandos, plasma rifles leveled, filled the smoking doorway. "Service and trance." Jax yelled, already yanking Lyra Zell towards the hidden panel he'd mentally tagged earlier. No time for finesse now. Their meticulously constructed illusion of blissful anonymity on Xylos had just shattered. They tumbled into the narrow, dimly lit service corridor, the shouts of Guardian soldiers echoing behind them as alarms began to shriek throughout the luxury resort. Their sprint to the Star Wanderer's hidden docking bay was a blur of adrenaline and near misses, Jax's blaster barking twice to discourage overly enthusiastic pursuit. Engines screaming, the Star Wanderer tore through Xylos's shimmering atmosphere, Guardian cruisers, sleek, predatory, and far too numerous, hot on their tail. Plasma fire crisscrossed the space around them. Jax wrestled with the controls, the old freighter groaning in protest as he pushed her systems far beyond their recommended limits. He was good, damned good, but even his skills were being tested. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and running out of sky. "They're locking on." Lyra Zell called out from the co-pilot's seat, her fingers a blur across the tactical display, her voice tight with strain. "Multiple missile locks. Got any bright ideas, Princess?" Jax grunted, throwing the Star Wanderer into a spiraling dive that narrowly avoided a blast meant to vaporize their engines. "Because my usual playbook for outrunning half the Guardian fleet is coming up a little short right now." Lyra Zell's eyes, fixed on the chaos outside, suddenly narrowed with a desperate resolve. Her hand darted to the small, unassuming case containing the celestial keystone, still secured at her hip. "We need a distraction, Ryder. A big one." "Whoa, hold on." Jax protested, catching her movement out of the corner of his eye. "We don't even know what that thing does, not really. You said it could shatter a sector." "And it might be the only thing that saves ours," she retorted, her voice sharp with urgency. Her blue fingers were already working the clasp. "It's a risk we have to take." Before Jax could argue further, and what argument could he offer when Guardian missiles were bracketing their ship? She had the metallic cube in her hand. The moment her skin made contact with its intricately patterned surface, the celestial keystone began to pulse. A soft, ethereal blue light, eerily matching the hue of Lyra Zell's own skin, emanated from within it. The complex etchings on its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid starlight. "That's new," Jax muttered, watching with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "It didn't do that when your contact showed it to me on Cygnus 7. Or when he briefly held it himself." Then, the ship's systems surged. Consoles flickered wildly, lights pulsed, and the engine's familiar thrum deepened, intensified, resonating with a power Jax had never felt from the Star Wanderer before. The pursuing Guardian cruisers, clearly visible on the main view screen, suddenly faltered, their tight formation breaking as if in confusion. "What in the seven hells did you do?" Jax demanded, yanking the ship through another evasive maneuver, though the immediate pressure seemed to have lessened. I don't know," Lyra Zell began, her voice laced with a sudden weakness. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she swayed in her seat, her hand flying to her temple. A fine sheen of sweat glistened on her forehead. "Something's wrong." The celestial keystone in her grip flared brilliantly, bathing the cockpit in an intense azure light. And then, as if that wasn't enough excitement for one day, the Star Wanderer's communication system crackled to life, not with a single hail, but with dozens. Multiple channels, reserved and open, lit up simultaneously across the comm panel. Jax stared, his blood running cold. "We're broadcasting." Stars above, Lyra Zell, the keystone activated some kind of beacon. She forced herself upright, her eyes wide as she scanned the readings. "Not just broadcasting, Jax. We're transmitting on frequencies used by every major power in the sector. The Hegemon Council, the Corporate Alliance, the Zorian Protectorate, even some encrypted channels I don't recognize." Her breath hitched. "And something else. A single, tight beam ping. Untraceable. It just looked. An unknown observer." "Great. Just what they needed." "So, instead of 3 Guardian cruisers chasing us," Jax growled, his mind racing through impossible calculations, "we're about to have the entire blasted galaxy on our tail." "Fantastic." He spotted a dense cluster of irregular shapes on the long-range scanner. "Asteroid field. Dead ahead. It's our only shot at losing some of this attention." He navigated the Star Wanderer into the treacherous, debris-strewn expanse, the ship bucking and groaning as he dodged spinning rocks and gravitational anomalies. Lyra Zell had gone unnervingly quiet. When Jax finally found a temporary, shadowed refuge in the lee of a colossal, pockmarked asteroid, he turned to her. She was pale, her vibrant blue skin taking on an almost translucent quality, a stark contrast to the dark circles under her eyes. "You need to rest," he insisted, his voice softer than he intended. He unbuckled his harness. "I'll keep watch." To his surprise, and growing concern, she didn't argue. Lyra Zell wasn't the type to show weakness, not unless something was seriously wrong. In the ship's small, cramped sleeping quarters, he helped her onto the narrow bunk. As his hand brushed her forehead, he recoiled slightly. "You're burning up," he said, alarm clear in his voice. "Zorians don't get fevers, do they? I thought your people had different biology." "We do," she replied weakly, her eyelids fluttering. "Our bodies regulate temperature. This is not normal." "Then what's happening to you?" he asked, his gaze locked on her, fear coiling in his stomach. Lyra Zell closed her eyes, her breathing shallow, almost imperceptible. I think it's the celestial keystone," she whispered. "When I touched it, it must have reacted with something in my physiology." She opened her eyes, and they found his, filled with a dawning, terrifying understanding. Or maybe it's reacting to us, Jax. Us? What do you mean, us? But even as he asked, a cold dread, mixed with a memory of moonlight and ember wine on a Xylosian balcony, began to crystallize in his mind. Her voice was barely a breath. Human and Zorian biology, it's compatible. In ways most species aren't. But there are consequences to intimate contact. Consequences that aren't well documented or understood. His mind flashed back to their night together on Xylos, to the intensity of their connection, the passion that had surprised them both. The kiss that had complicated everything. He remembered her words, "This complicates things." Had she known? Suspected? "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Lyrazel?" His own voice was hoarse. A small, almost heartbreakingly fragile smile touched her lips. "My people have legends about such unions with humans. They speak of them as either great blessings or terrible curses, depending on which elder you ask." "And which do you believe?" he asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. Her hand found his, her fingers, though weak, closing around his with surprising strength. "I believe," she whispered, her gaze holding his, "in making my own destiny, Jax Ryder." Before he could respond, before he could even begin to process the enormity of what she was implying, the ship's proximity alarm blared through the small cabin, a jarring, urgent shriek. Jax was in the cockpit in 3 strides, Lyrazel, somehow, right behind him. A quick check of the sensors painted a grim picture. Multiple vessels were entering the asteroid field, their energy signatures flaring. Guardian ships, yes, but others too. Unknowns. "They found us," he said, his voice grim. "That damn Keystone signal must be stronger than we thought." Lyrazel struggled to stand straighter, one hand instinctively, protectively, going to her abdomen. A gesture so subtle, so fleeting, Jax almost missed it. Almost. The implication sent another jolt through him, sharper this time, a bewildering mix of raw terror and something else entirely, something fierce and protective that he wasn't remotely ready to name. "We need to move," she said, her voice surprisingly firm despite her obvious weakness. "You're in no condition to." "I'm not staying behind, Jax," she interrupted, her nebula eyes blazing with a spark of their old fire. "Whatever's happening to me, whatever this is, we face it together." He looked at her then, truly looked at her, the proud Zorian warrior, the woman who'd held him at gunpoint, who'd kissed him under alien moons, and who now stood before him, pale and trembling but utterly resolute, her hand resting over a secret that could change everything. His own destiny, it seemed, was no longer just his own.